Dean Reed was an American singer, songwriter, and actor who shot to a peculiar fame in the communist bloc and South America from the 1960s onwards, whilst being almost completely unknown in the West. So what was the story behind the unconventional life and suspicious premature death of the man who became known as Red Elvis? Reed was born in Colorado in 1938 into a traditional all-American family. He graduated high school in 1956, the same year as the real Elvis first appeared to widespread hysteria on The Ed Sullivan Show. A budding singer and guitarist himself, the handsome Reed moved to LA a year later, ignoring his father's wish for him to join the military and dreaming of a career in show business. He did manage to get signed to Columbia Records, and courtesy of some acting classes, was able to land a few small roles in television. Despite releasing a number of singles at the end of the 50s and into the early 1960s, success in the US eluded him. The Search became his only Billboard Top 100 entry, charting at number 92. All the while, Reed found Hollywood soul-destroying. Speaking in 1985, he said, "When I was in Hollywood, it was a place of fear and exploitation, a prostitution camp where very few people could keep their integrity. I'm not ready to come back and do Coca-Cola ads to make a living." However, he found great success in South America, initially with the song Our Summer Romance. Such was the interest that his record company sent him on a 40-day tour of Brazil, Chile, and Peru. Reed was mobbed when he arrived, and remarkably, was as famous and popular in South America at the time as the Beatles and Elvis. The trip to South America crystallized his developing left-wing political philosophy. The region was in political turmoil at the time, and Reed responded to the poverty and inequality he saw by performing free concerts in poor neighborhoods and prisons. Returning to the US, he was still almost completely unknown. He and his wife Patty, who he had met and married in Los Angeles, decided to move to Argentina. The country was at the epicenter of regional turmoil at the time. Reed participated in demonstrations, espoused socialism, and regularly expressed anti-American sentiments. As a Spanish speaker, he integrated completely and worked extensively in both music and films, including his own television programs in Buenos Aires. Staying for 4 years, Dean became persona non grata after the Argentine military coup. Intolerant of his activism, the new government deported him. Rather than go back to the US, Reed headed for Europe, where he had also had a measure of success. 1966 was a watershed. He went on a singing tour of the USSR, which was wildly successful, and was a gift to the Soviet regime, who were always anxious to prove that there was nothing available in the US that couldn't be had just as good in the USSR. Settling in Rome throughout 1967 and 68, Reed starred in spaghetti westerns, whilst continuing to tour Central and Eastern Europe, solidifying his popularity, especially in the communist bloc. He hadn't forgotten his activist life, and made several reckless visits to unstable parts of South America, reappearing briefly in Argentina, and being arrested twice in Chile, which included brief periods in prison. At this time, his wife filed for divorce. Reed also wrote an open letter to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, accusing him of having slandered the USSR. These acts increased his popularity in the communist bloc, but he was completely ignored in the US, as the US media often does to contrarians whose views cause embarrassment. By 1973, Dean decided to settle in East Germany, continuing to write, direct, and perform. His recordings mainly covered the songs of other major artists, as the Communist bloc were unencumbered by the copyright laws of the West. However, he didn't renounce his American citizenship and always filed his tax returns. In 1986, Reid was interviewed by CBS 60 Minutes, during which he fiercely criticized then-President Ronald Reagan and defended the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which outraged members of his family, as well as many Americans. Little did anyone know that just 6 weeks later, Dean Reid would be dead, drowned in Zoethener Lake, near his home in East Berlin. Originally ruled an accidental drowning, friends believed it was a suicide, while his family in the US believed he'd been murdered, reasoning that he was no longer of any propaganda value to the communists and had become troublesome. Matters were cleared up shortly after, at least within the DDR, when Reid's suicide note was found on the back of a screenplay in his car. In it, he regretted the poor state of his relationship with his third wife and apologized to East German leader Erich Honecker for any potential embarrassment to the DDR. He needn't have worried, since the ultra-secretive East German authorities classified the note. It only came to light after the fall of the Berlin Wall. In the intervening years, there was speculation about whether he worked for the Stasi, the KGB, or was even a CIA plant. Ultimately, Dean Reid's life and career was just a fascinating anomaly. A long-forgotten pop superstar in a long-gone Soviet empire, who met the same sad fate of so many of his counterparts in the capitalist West.